Yeah, I felt like we haven't met in a while, and I've been wanting to, but life be that way sometimes. So unfortunately, I can only do one meet. But I'd love to hear about what you're doing with your charts or
All
anything else
right,
you want to share.
good. Yeah, the book's updated now. It should be done. And there's a lot of new notes in here. I mentioned the rabbis and stuff. Based on the one discussion we had a while back now, I went ahead and went in here and put Egyptian gods that would have been polemically demoted by this poem or psalm that the Hebrews sang in the wilderness coming out of Egypt. So I put the Egyptian gods in here, but you could probably put Canaanite deities in or Sumerian deities in. And so page 1 is updated, and page 2, I don't think I changed much on it recently, so it's good. Page 3 is fixed up. Page 4, the print I had on Flickr for the last month had a major error on it. For some reason, this note was hidden, and there's like this blank spot here with just the little rainbow symbol. And so that was a real bad error there, and that's fixed now. But this page should be good to go, and this page is all fixed up. I didn't change much on it or the tower. Didn't need to change much. I did add some additional information right in here, so people want to look at that. And page 7, I didn't change much. That should be good. Now, these, I haven't talked about this much, Lane, but one of the major changes I made over the last few months was going to the Samaritan Pentateuch in the genealogies, because Dillman said to do that. He said that's probably the best record out of the Hebrew and the Septuagint and the others.
You said the Samaritan?
Yeah, so this
Okay.
follows the Samaritan Pentateuch, which should have the most reliable genealogical record. And then I mirrored Cain to it, Cain's descendants. So the outcome is better. All my old videos are now obsolete, at least back here from this point back. This is the right way of looking at it. This didn't change much. I wish I had blown those two charts up, but I never did do that. But this I have updated. I blew it up bigger, and I updated it. Per the Samaritan Pentateuch, something very strange happens. One thing I did, though, before I mention this, one thing I did on the previous version of this, I just quoted some early Christians about the 6,000-year tradition, the Septa Millennial tradition, it's called. And so what I did, instead of that, I went back and got this from this old scholar, Shamil. He goes through and gives extensive references to this idea, starting with Rabbi Eliezer. Yeah, starting with Rabbi Eliezer, he goes through a number of old references to this theory, so that you can see it's an old Jewish concept that carries straight into the Christian way of thinking, this septimillennial view, because they were Kilius, they were premillennial. and that is the Jewish view, and it's the correct view. And a view that has continuity back into Jewish thought on that concept is very important. So this brings that out better, this page from Shamil, giving all these references. And then I added something from the Anchor Bible Dictionary on Haran, and I note that this is where the attempted axis occurred from the Edenic people. And here's what's interesting. When you lay out the Samaritan Pentateuch as compared with our timeline, okay, then what ends up happening is 6,000 years hasn't arrived yet. It'll come in 2190 AD. And this isn't meant to predict a date, like I say right down here. It's not meant to predict a date, but it is meant to show that we're not way out of line on things. Some people think we live today so distantly removed from Bible times and like maybe it wasn't true or something. But when you look at it this way, everything still falls right in line. And if the Samaritan is off a little bit, this could expire at any time. So it's real interesting, isn't it?
Very much so. That is interesting.
I think I have this number right, 2190, because I show on here the axis would have been in 3811 BC. This is according to the Samaritan Pentateuch. So 3811 at 1 AD, a year is skipped here. So I believe 6,000 years from 3811 would be 2190 AD. So 2183 would be the beginning of the 70th week. If it runs out perfectly. How about that?
That is very interesting, man. I know we've talked about how, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been like 2,000 years, what, from the fall to Noah, 2,000 years from Noah to Christ, 2,000 years from Christ to, but correct me if I'm wrong, if there's
Yeah.
something like that. Is there kind of something like that going on?
Yeah, there's a breakup like that. People break it down like that. Let's see. Adam, how did you break it down? Okay, here's the fall. What you've heard from O to 2, Garden of Eden to Abraham, Abraham to Christ, Christ to us.
Okay, to Abraham, not Noah, to Abraham. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like your note. Bruno is not predicting the Lord's return that year. But
Yeah.
that is interesting though.
Yeah.
We have that 6,000 years from the fall. And where does the 6,000 year significance come from?
Well, it's just based on the Genesis 1 and then the Jews keeping the Sabbath. And so the ancient Jews thought, there's a pattern here. I'll bet that 6,000 years of wickedness have to expire before this glorious era of the prophets occurs. Because their prophets told them that the kingdom would be restored, but then a glorious era would ensue. And they just had this sabbatical reckoning in their minds. And it's interesting because by the dating of the Septuagint, the expiration of 6,000 years would have been in like the year 525 or something like that. I forget what it was exactly, but like if you follow a certain Septuagint reading. But the Samaritan Pentateuch, it'll arrive at 2190. That'll be 6,000 years.
Gotcha.
So that's interesting.
Got
Yeah,
quite a ways to go.
yeah. I don't know. That Samaritan Pentateuch could be wrong, and we could see final things unfolding right now. I don't know, man. It's crazy over there. Over there in the Middle East and stuff.
There's no place I would less rather be than in a tunnel in Gaza.
Well, so I updated all those and then I added one new page, and I have to tell you about that.
You know
And
what I like about this chart? Your other chart's really awesome about how detailed it is, but I like how you just summarize like the real major things in this one. Like the other one, like it's great for the details, but it kind of can be a lot. So I
yeah,
like how this chart's just like let's get rid of all the details and let's put all the major stuff on this chart and see how it all lines up. So I like this chart. I like both charts, but I like this chart too.
Yeah.
this one goes way back too.
Oh, I 20,000 years. I don't know what Ken Ham would say about that.
Yeah, Ken Ham doesn't like that. What
No.
does Ken Ham say about this? That we're misdating it. It had to be post-flood. That's what he thinks, I betcha.
Well, anyways, on to what you were saying with another page.
Yeah, so this is the new page. And the reason I had to make this, I was watching a video by Mike Heiser, and he was discussing a book by Dr. Joshua Swamidass concerning genealogical issues, and it gives wonderful support for people that hold a view like mine.
Swamidas's work works only if it is correct that there were people outside the garden. And Swamidas specifically has people outside the garden and before Adam and Eve, so he's presenting his hypothesis in concert with pre-Adamism.
And maybe I'll make a video on Heiser's book review. Like, he brings up a few problems I could deal with him, but he brings up Romans 5, and I was like, just seeing him talk about it, I was like, that in my book, I don't cover Romans 5. And I know, like you do, Lane, I just know that Romans 5 is what comes right to someone's mind who thinks about this view, this pre-Adamite view. They want an answer to Romans 5. And I thought, I've got to make this additional page that answers Romans 5 and imputation and just how it all works. And that's what it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I remember our detailed video on Romans 5 as Romans 5. It looks like 14. I see the key there is the main
Yeah.
verse that really needs explained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I draw attention to that. And this looks overwhelming at first, but people shouldn't. They should relax. These are all just Bible verses you find throughout your New Testament, and they're color-coded to this explanation right here in the center top that I'll look at here. But you can kind of ignore that for now. The big passage in the middle is Romans 5, and I included the whole chapter. But the most important part that people need explained is right in here. Romans 5:12 through the end. So what I did, I laid it out, and this passage, in order to understand it right, you have to understand that Paul pauses for a moment to make an aside. There's an aside here for clarity to what he's saying. And in fact, it's a double parenthesis. And people might struggle with this at first until you read it through a few times. But to explain this exactly, you don't have to take my word for it. To explain it, I've included a very important note on this, on the syntactical construction of the passage. And you can read all about this. This parenthesis begins at verse 13 and continues through verse 17. It may well be that we should not regard these 5 verses as one parenthesis, but as 2. The first consisting of verses 13 and 14, and the second of verses 15 to 17. Okay, this very important note comes from John Murray in his book, The Imputation of Adam's Sin, which is a very good book on this subject. And so that is why you see the asterisk here. That is why it steps for 13 and 14, then it steps in again for 15, 16, and 17. And that is an important thing to understand as you read it, because Paul makes an aside here for clarity, and then he summarizes his point down here. He returns to what he was talking to. A thought in 12 is interrupted, and he returns to it in 18. And really, there's just some classic errors that have been brought to this that people just need to think about. And I describe that in this note here, where, let me zoom in a little more here. Okay, the orange text indicates imputation of the priestly act to the account of mankind generally. The centerpiece of God's plan are the 2 great priests, a Pauline theme most prominently presented here in Romans chapter 5 and in 1 Corinthians 15. God's method of imputation has been miscomprehended by the so-called church since the time of Augustine, and in the following manner. A. The imputation was said to occur at the moment of Adam's transgression. Lane, what I'm trying to refer to here is young earth creationist idea that at the moment Adam ate the fruit, the laws of nature changed, and a perfect, sinless, immortal world was changed into this present one. That's never taught, and it's been assumed for a long time. It's never taught. And B, this imputation was said to proceed in a forward manner by way of progeny. This again, what I'm referring to here, and this comes out in Augustine, but other men as well, and it's the idea that this transgression in Adam spreads forward in the seed by the semen from the male. And so what we have, though, is a transmission that's only to the human and only to offspring of Adam. That can't be right. But this error is unwarranted, these 2 assumptions brought to the text, these 2 assumptions. But this error is unwarranted for A, the application is never stated to have occurred at the moment of Adam's transgression, and B, this corruption extends beyond the human race and even before Adam.
There is some interesting stuff in this little note here. I see a little further on, and forgive me if I'm taking your thunder here, but looking at that word there, or that sentence there, that the transgression of the first priest was imputed from the beginning of all creation, may be discerned by the fact a beast of the field beguiled Eve prior to Adam's sin.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Now, in Romans 5, Paul's example is that before Mosaic law, there was sin in the world. But I give an example that goes way back earlier than that, and even before Adam's transgression.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right here, this particular example. So this goes back even further than Paul's example by referring to the serpent. I'm using the serpent to show this. And I should explain this thoroughly in a video sometime, but you can see this on page 131, notes Z and AB. If people look into that, they will see that the intent of the narrator is to show us corruption in the creation coming against Adam. It's meant to be shown to us there. So that's why I bring that out here. And this proves that it existed before Adam. It proves it exists beyond the human race. The serpent is a beast. Well, that's a story we've gotten into before, but this beast of the field was a creature, but it was corrupt. And the whole cosmos was corrupted by the action of the first priest. The classic way of looking at imputation just doesn't grasp that, doesn't explain that. You end up having multiple imputations happening at Adam's sin. Well, there's this corrupted seed that makes us sinners, but then there's this corruption of the cosmos that happened too, and so forth. But the Bible doesn't really teach that. The Bible teaches this view. The imputation of Adam's transgression from the beginning of creation, an odd concept at first thought, happens to correspond with the unusual method of imputation described in 1 Peter 2:24, which is,
who, his own self, bare our sins in his own body on the tree.
this is an important passage. Jesus, who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree. That's a very important verse for understanding imputation, as I explain in this note. This concept I'm trying to communicate to people happens to correspond with the unusual method of imputation described in 1 Peter 2:24, in which, at a moment in time, at the cross of Christ, a sacrifice for the sins of the world took place. 1 John 2:2. Albeit, even those now reading have yet to exhaust the sinful conduct allotted them in this mortality. Sins born at the cross. Do you see the point I'm making?
I do. Even though the moment of Christ on the cross was a singular moment, the impact it has imputes throughout time. It covers sins that haven't even happened yet.
Yeah, it's hard to articulate, but this same issue here is true of the first Adam. And this is why you can find sin and death in the many, many creations before this one, so to speak, in the many millions of years of Earth's natural history. That's an issue creationists bring up a lot. How can there be death before Adam? And you can answer, how can there be sin after the cross? Because he bore our sins at the cross. So it's just something to think about. Imputation, the way it functions, is a little more hard to wrap your mind around, a little deeper than has been assumed by the church. And that error has led us into all kinds of problems. A lot of problems are solved when you look at it right. So this issue with the orange text here, though, is primarily the imputation issue and the Romans 5 issue. The blue, green, red, this goes beyond that issue into my theology. The Spirit-empowered church on her mission to bring in the age. The green text indicates success, bringing in that age, hope about that age. And the red text indicates failure to bring it in, warning of failure, warning that failure can occur. And this is the true way to put the Bible together. But this is, I know there's people out there that would never accept this. They would find this just highly controversial. So, but you don't have to follow this. I mean, you have the pre-Adamite exposition here, but the book goes beyond that into my theology for people that are interested and people who have the guts. Yeah, man, so this page kind of presses the closed window as well. Of course, people may pick up on that a bit here. I don't know. Honestly, my book doesn't get into that much. It's mostly pre-Adamite.
Mm-hmm.
Just that final page, man, it does get into it. A warning of failure is this famous passage in Romans 11. Whoops.
What did you do? I turned off the wall. Wait, didn't you turn off the whole movie? I must have pressed the wrong button.
Huh, that was kind of strange.
Well, I wonder if we put in 40 minutes and it automatically started another one or something.
No, well, it says time left 8:50.
Well, what on earth was that? I hope I didn't do anything wrong, and I hope I recorded this.
That was weird. It like stopped and then it started again.
Oh, you saw it stop? Okay.
Yeah, but you like finished talking. It was weird. Like you closed your screen. It just went kind of dark for a second, like paused, buffered or whatever. Recording stopped, went back to whatever this
Huh.
was, and then it started again. So it was recording the whole time you were explaining. So hopefully it's still there.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I have 8 minutes left, I'll say something about Romans 5. Is that
Sure.
cool? Okay.
Sounds good.
Lane, I was watching this movie with Mike Heiser on Romans 5, and he denies the imputation of Adam's sin. So he doesn't really believe Adam's sin was imputed to us. And he disputes how this should be taken, which this is an old issue. This has been around a long time. And that's why I put Murray's argumentation in here. Because John Murray, the imputation of Adam's sin, he makes 4 arguments right here that will show you it's absolutely certain these passages are in fact teaching that Adam's sin is imputed to us.
Do you
And
think, are you trying to share your screen right now?
oh yeah, it's not doing it,
It's
so
not doing it right now.
it
So
turned that off,
it
huh?
did, yes.
Okay.
I just it sounded like you were pointing at something and I don't see
Yeah.
anything, so I wanted to make sure. I mean, you might
Well,
edit this anyways.
that little glitch turned off the screen share, I guess.
Well, put it back on. Put the
Yes,
movie
sir.
back
Yes,
on.
sir.
You gotta get that thing fixed.
All right, good
Okay.
deal. I can see it now. Go ahead.
All right.
Got about 5 minutes.
But Dr. Heiser disputes the meaning of this, and thinks it means because of the fact we all end up sinners. And it's not just Heiser. A lot of people have said this. So I included that for that reason there. And I probably will make a little video where I respond to Heiser and I explain to people why the imputation of Adam's sin is correct. And then the imputation of Christ's righteousness is important too. And to understand grace, you have to understand this, right? So I'll make a video on that. But I just want to tell people that the book is updated. Here's one more thing I'll mention to you, Lane. The book is updated, and so people can simply go click on it, and right here you can download the original, whatever you want. It's free. It's that easy. You can download all the pages. There's 11 pages altogether. This is the new one. And what I'm thinking about doing, Lane, is setting up a book. You can print a book and you can put it on Amazon, or you can have it here where people can order it. And I don't know how much it would cost to make one, but I'm going to look into making some kind of book that people could get that would have all the pages. So that's another thing I'll just think about doing. But here's the free version. Images you can have on your device, and you can sit and look at them sitting in the waiting room at the dentist or whatever.
There you go. Prioritize that spare time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for zooming, man. It's been a while. I haven't used our recent videos. I don't know. I haven't been in the video making mood or whatever. But I'll make something with this and promote the book, get people over here to download it, look at it. It's all fixed now, so should be grooving.
Awesome. Well, you're working on something, and you're welcome. And I always enjoy meeting with you, Tim. That exposition on Romans 5 we've talked about before, but this stuff gets so deep. There's so much there. It's nice to get a refresher
Yeah.
um, on that real important theology. It's always kind of encouraging because I mean, I still think it's good to live a righteous life while we're on earth and to honor the Lord the best we can. But I mean, I at school, at church, uh, um, and with my girlfriend, and she's great. She loves the Lord and does her best. But they all have the traditional theology of like, as we've talked about before, the whole like you're saved by grace, but you really should be doing a bunch of works because you never really know if you're saved, kind of thing. But you
Yeah.
are, but
Well,
you aren't.
those
And
passages urging people to good works are just all about the mission to usher in the kingdom. So
right.
people can't read them as you do these in order to save your soul, or else you're violating grace. You're violating things like this. Through the obedience of one, the many will be made righteous. Through one act of righteousness, there resulted justification of life to all men. Right there. You can't violate this with your works salvation. So you have to figure out what those verses are about.
Right. They spin a lot of different ways, but anyways.
Yeah, they're about hastening in the age, and you read them in their context, and this page will help people see that context in all these verses. It'll help people see it. So.